Unpacking why major fashion brands are suddenly collapsing starts with a simple but uncomfortable truth. Many of these brands didn't fail because fashion changed overnight. They failed because the business environment they were built for quietly disappeared, and they didn't adapt fast enough to notice. For years, major fashion brands operated in a world that rewarded scale above all else. More stores meant more visibility. More collections meant more relevance. Faster production meant staying on trend. Growth covered inefficiency, and brand recognition created a sense of safety. But that model was fragile, and the pressure building underneath it has finally become impossible to ignore. The first major reason these brands are collapsing is cost structure mismatch. Traditional fashion brands were designed around physical retail dominance. Long-term leases, large store footprints, global logistics networks, and seasonal inventory cycles all made sense when foot traffic was reliable and margins were predictable. Today, those same structures are liabilities. Rent hasn't come down fast enough. Labor costs are higher. Inventory risk is harder to manage. When sales slow even slightly, the fixed costs overwhelm the business. At the same time, demand has become far less predictable. Consumers no longer shop fashion on a stable seasonal rhythm. Trends rise and fall faster, driven by social platforms rather than fashion calendars. When brands commit months in advance to large production runs, they are gambling. Miss the trend, and inventory piles up. Discounting follows, margins collapse. What once felt like efficient scale now feels like inflexibility. Another major factor is the erosion of brand loyalty. For decades, big fashion brands relied on name recognition to drive repeat purchases. But younger consumers are less loyal to logos and more loyal to aesthetics, values, and price. They discover brands through influencers, not storefronts. They switch quickly. This makes it harder for legacy brands to justify premium pricing, especially when fast fashion and direct-to-consumer competitors can imitate styles at lower cost. Digital disruption plays a central role here. Many major fashion brands treated e-commerce as an add-on rather than a core operating system. Their digital channels were built to support stores, not replace them. Meanwhile, newer brands were born online. They built lean operations, flexible supply chains, and data-driven merchandising from day one. When consumer behavior shifted decisively online, the gap in agility became obvious. Another overlooked reason for collapse is inventory complexity. Large fashion brands carry thousands of SKUs across regions, sizes, and seasons. Managing that complexity requires precision forecasting. In today's volatile environment, forecasts are wrong more often than right. Excess inventory ties up cash. Markdowns train customers to wait for discounts. Over time, the brand loses pricing power and relevance. There is also a financing problem. Many fashion brands expanded aggressively using debt, assuming stable cash flows would continue. When sales slowed and margins tightened, debt servicing became a serious burden. Interest rates rising made refinancing more expensive. What once looked like smart leverage turned into a trap. Some brands didn't collapse because they weren't popular, but because they ran out of financial flexibility. Leadership decisions have also played a role. In many cases, executives optimized for short-term performance rather than long-term resilience. Cost-cutting delayed investment in technology. Store expansion continued even as foot traffic declined. Marketing spend focused on maintaining visibility rather than building differentiation. These decisions bought time, but they also deepened structural weaknesses. Another key issue is the middle market squeeze. Many collapsing brands sit between luxury and fast fashion. They are not exclusive enough to command high margins, and not cheap enough to compete on volume. This middle ground used to be safe. Today, it is the most dangerous place to be. Consumers either trade up for quality and status, or trade down for affordability. Brands stuck in the middle lose relevance on both ends. Supply chain fragility has made everything worse. Global disruptions exposed how dependent fashion brands are on long, complex supply chains. Delays, rising shipping costs, and inconsistent production schedules created mismatches between supply and demand. When products arrive late, they miss the moment. Fashion is time-sensitive. Miss the window, and the inventory becomes deadweight. There is also a cultural shift happening. Consumers are more conscious of sustainability, overproduction, and waste. Brands built on rapid turnover and constant consumption are facing skepticism. While many brands talk about sustainability, their underlying business models often contradict those messages. This gap between marketing and reality erodes trust, especially among younger buyers. Marketing itself has become more expensive and less predictable. Digital advertising costs have risen. Organic reach is harder to achieve. Influencer marketing is crowded and inconsistent. Big brands no longer enjoy automatic attention. Maintaining visibility now requires constant spending, which further pressures margins. When marketing efficiency declines, scale becomes a disadvantage instead of an advantage. Another reason collapses feel sudden is that warning signs were hidden for years. Brands used promotions, outlet stores, and wholesale partnerships to move excess inventory. These channels masked demand weakness. But over time, they trained consumers to expect discounts and reduced full-price sales. Once those levers stopped working, the underlying problem was exposed all at once. It's also important to note that collapse doesn't always mean disappearance. For many brands, collapse means restructuring, store closures, ownership changes, or significant downsizing. The brand name may survive, but the original business model does not. This creates the perception of sudden failure, when in reality, the decline was gradual. Technology gaps are another silent contributor. Many large fashion brands still rely on outdated systems for inventory management, demand forecasting, and customer insights. Without real-time data, decision-making lags reality. Smaller, more agile competitors adjust faster, test more frequently, and waste less capital. Over time, that gap compounds. The broader economic environment has simply accelerated what was already happening. Inflation has made consumers more selective. Discretionary spending is under pressure. Fashion is one of the first categories where people pull back. Brands with weak differentiation feel that pullback immediately. There is no buffer anymore. So when we talk about major fashion brands suddenly collapsing, what we're really unpacking is the collision between old assumptions and new realities. Assumptions about loyalty, scale, seasonality, and control no longer hold. The brands that fail are often the ones that believe their past success made them durable. The brands that survive this period will look very different. Fewer stores, tighter assortments, faster feedback loops, better data, stronger identity, more discipline around inventory and capital. Fashion will not disappear, but the way it is built, sold, and scaled is being rewritten. The collapses we're seeing now are not anomalies. They are signals. Signals that the old-fashioned business model has reached its limits. And for brands that don't fundamentally change how they operate, collapse is no longer a possibility. It's a matter of timing,